Well, welcome back, Empaths. We're here for another bonus episode, and I'm really, really excited today to share these incredible women with you. Sisters Jennifer James and Jill Stanley come from a long line of women with mystical abilities. Jennifer holds 2 master's degrees, works in the field of education, and is a tarot reader and intuitive. Jill, a recycling broker by day, also works as a psychic medium, energy reader, and intuitive life coach. They're the creators and co-hosts of the Common Mystics podcast, where they share their adventures exploring spiritually charged locations and giving voice to the spirits who haunt them. I'm so excited you're both here. Welcome, Jen and Jill. This is so, so exciting, and I know our listeners are going to love this episode.
You are so
Yay.
sweet. We are so excited to be here.
Yay. Hello. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, I think you're both such a wonderful example of you live, and I hate air quotes, but I'm going to do them anyway. Very normal, balanced, regular lives. You have real jobs in society that are linear and practical. You're both very intelligent women, but you found this beautiful balance between that and your woo. So can you explain how you kind of, well, it's true because
I love
Jen,
that.
I know being a traditional teacher for many years, and then to be able to step, oh, sorry, I'm going to be gone this weekend. I'm going to run into an old scary institution. That's a big balance. It really is. So what pushed you kind of off the edge to step into this world more fully?
Jen,
Well,
you take this one.
Okay. All right. I'll start. You mentioned that we come from a long line of women with mystical abilities, and we were both very close to our grandmother, who was devoutly Catholic, would go to church every day when she could, and would pray every day, but was also a psychic medium. And we'd be sitting in her kitchen, and she'd get up and leave because a dead person had come to her and asked her for prayers and for help. She never would have called herself a psychic medium, but that's what she was. So we had that experience growing up, and then our mother was very much into all of the divination arts. And so we were around the tarot, we were around psychics all the time, earth magic, spells. This was just part of our upbringing. So to us, it was normal. And for me, the tricky thing was entering society and doing education and trying to be more quote unquote normal and get rid of my woo.
Yes.
I was trying to get rid of my woo, but Jill, you had a little bit of a different experience.
We grew up and had the opportunity to experience the woo-woo, and we had it, and it was more like a commonplace. We didn't call it anything. I remember I called mom and was like, guess what? I'm a medium. And she's like, oh, is that what we're calling it? So it really was an opportunity for me just to like sit in spirit. And I didn't know I was doing it then because I was really comparing what I was doing and how I was interacting with like my imaginary friends, or like the way I felt in the garage with what my grandma and my mom and my aunt were experiencing as psychics. So I always felt like I was among spirits, but I also knew because of the way we were raised, it's not something you talked about in society. So grandma always told us, like, don't say anything. People won't believe you. They'll think you're crazy. So having these experiences, I wouldn't go to school and be like, did anyone else feel this?
Right. Does anyone else have ghosts in their room?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
That is so fascinating because that's exactly what it was for me. Brought up Catholic, went to mass, catechism, the whole thing. But my father was so strong and my mother was very intuitive as well. So they would talk about, we lived in an old house in New England growing up. And we'd hear noises upstairs. He'd say, oh, well, that's just Carrie, the old lady who used to live here. Don't worry about it. And it was just normal. But again, being able to flip that switch and say, okay, now I have to go to school, or I have to go to mass, or I have to go, hang out with people who aren't wired this way. It really is hard to have a foot in both worlds sometimes. And I think with so many people now embracing this, we kind of have an edge in that we've lived this way our whole lives. I love that you're both, you have the jobs, you have this background. And, my grandmother was very intuitive, very, very, very French Canadian Catholic. And she used her juju to win at bingo. Won every damn time. So
that's awesome.
So what led you to start investigating? Because you're both so highly intuitive, highly empathic, very, very sensitive. And from my opinion, you guys go in some scary ass places.
You're not wrong.
I think we started doing this as adults just to amuse ourselves, quite honestly. Jill and I would get together, get in the car, and just start driving. And we would let our intuition lead us to places, and we would always find energy. And then I was kind of using that opportunity to practice those skills. And I'd share my impressions, she'd share her impressions, but really it was just to entertain ourselves. Wouldn't you say, Jill?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's just sister time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, how do you decide where you want to go and explore?
So what usually happens is I'm usually the driver because I can't, Jennifer's very safe and not an aggressive driver. So I have to drive.
And Jill is very impatient and passionate about getting places. So it works well.
So Jen's the navigator, and we get in the car and we close our eyes and we set our intention. Jen, what's our intention?
Our intention is to find a verifiable story that was previously unknown to us, but most importantly, to give voice to the voiceless. Right.
Oh,
We express out loud what we're feeling and what we're picking up, and we just like make a right, make a left, and we end up finding a story. It works
Right.
every time.
Most of the time. I will say that our method, so what we do is I sit with a notepad and we just like talk about what we're getting and the information that's coming through. I write it all down, kind of shorthand. And then we know we're on the right track when we start getting validations in our surroundings, right? So I might be picking up on something like purple petunias. I might be hearing in my head purple petunias. And then we'll get to a park and it'll be full of purple petunias exclusively, right? So we'll know that, okay, we're where we need to be right now. We're on the way, and we call it our breadcrumbs. So that's how we know we're headed in the right direction. Now, there are practical purposes as well, that are practical factors that dictate where we investigate. You've already said we both have day jobs, and we don't have all the time in the world to be traveling the country. So we do a lot of our investigating in the Midwest. Because it's just a couple hours from either one of our homes. And then we have family like in Kansas, New York, Tennessee. So we go out that way, and we always take advantage of our surroundings to do investigating. Other than that, we really just take out a map of the United States, and we kind of, see, all right, where are we being pulled now?
see, I love that because you're basically getting the hell out of the way and letting spirit pull you towards the story or guide you to the story. And I appreciate the aggressive driving because we're in the same club with that. I want to get there and see what's waiting. Then I'm like patient as a saint, but then the driving thing. But that's really interesting that you can piggyback, because that's a mediumistic thing. Like a lot of times, two mediums will get on a stage for platform work, and they'll double team. They'll bring in and they'll get a stronger link with spirit. So you had mentioned earlier before we started recording that you've started to see a thread through all the stories, or a connection to something more. Could you talk about that for a bit, please?
As we were driving around, there seems to be themes. Like we were talking about, a good example, families being victimized. In our season 2, we had taken a road trip throughout the Southwest and the South Midwest of the United States. And there seemed to be families that were under prey or being preyed upon by people that were greedy, that wanted the family's money. And it came in different kind of representations, right? So we had the Swope family in Independence, Missouri, that had a son-in-law that married into the family, was systematically killing or trying to kill members of the family for the inheritance. And then it was crazy. And Denise, one of the central characters in that story was Colonel Tom Swope, and he was the nicest. Well, I should say the nicest, but he was like a crotchety old man, but he was so generous, and he wanted to take his inheritance instead of having the kids of the family inherit his mega millions at the time. He was trying to find a way to get it directly to the poor of Missouri.
Oh.
And he was killed before he had a chance to get that done, but he had a real urgency about that mission. And unfortunately, he was killed before in a terrible way before he was able to do that. So, but he was just knowing that someone that rich and that kind of crotchety and crazy. And he was funny because he would just like swear randomly in his room, like that. He was that kind of person. It makes me happy to say that that kind of person existed. And it just makes me kind of chuckle to think about that kind of person and how it was really important to him to share among the poor, because he said the rich will always take care of themselves.
Yeah, Jill, you had a
Wow.
straight up crush on this
I
this guy.
He was my
He did.
kind of man for sure.
But I think what you were getting at is that that was an example of a family that was being preyed upon and systematically murdered for their inheritance. And then on the same trip, there was another similar situation where Molly Burkhart, who was a Native American, I don't remember the tribe. Do you, Jill?
Osage.
Thank you. The Osage tribe her family was also systematically being murdered for the head rights. So sometimes we see when we get a story or some information from one spirit, it's like another spirit comes in and says, hey, they're talking about this, me too. Hey, they're talking about this, me too. And it's a really strange sort of situation because you're trying to follow your breadcrumbs and then, figure out, okay, what's our story that we're meant to tell? And I think the themes come in because it almost feels like attracts like. And when we start talking about something like, a family being murdered or family issues, we seem to get more energy and similar sort of information and similar stories from similar spirits who've lived through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I see that in readings that they'll come in themes. I'll have a week where all I talk to are nurses, or I'll talk to people who have someone was murdered, or I'll talk to, and it does it. And people must be so sick of me saying tapping into the collective, but it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. And spirit saying, okay, these ladies have a bead on this. So you get drawn to the place, you follow the breadcrumbs, then do you connect with a specific person in spirit to get the story, or do you go to a physical place and feel the energy there first, or both?
I think it's happened both ways. I think what's been really interesting for me, I'm just going to go out, Jill, and say that Jill was pretty much born a psychic medium. Like that's just part of who she is. And I'm 7 years older. So I remember when she was little, she was always different. Jill always had this ability and was always practicing this ability. For me, I'm not like that. I was very much trying to get away from the woo. And I'm a much more grounded, practical person. I think that for me personally, this experience working with Jill as my sister and as an investigator has helped me kind of come to terms and accept my abilities, but also learn about them. So I'm learning that my psychic ability of the energy of a place is different from that mediumship that comes through from a spirit who is specifically talking to me. Both will happen. I can't predict which is going to happen when we're on an investigation. Sometimes we'll be at a site and we'll be picking up the energy and talking about our impressions. Sometimes we'll never get to the site where something occurred, but a spirit will come out and say, this is what you're talking about. And the breadcrumbs will be so strong that we can't even deny it.
I love that. So then you take this information, you write it all out, you talk about it, you see what you're getting. And then how do you find the facts and the validation?
That's all Jill. Jill is an amazing researcher. And Jill, wouldn't you say, Jill, that the research is just as intuitive as the actual investigation?
First, I want to say you're being so nice to me right now. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I'm usually much more mean to you.
So the research really is intuitive. And a lot of times with our intention to give voice to the voiceless, that really keeps us on track. And Jen and I are sisters and really competitive. So
it's true.
So if I have a really good hit and I'm really fascinated by my psychic abilities, and I'm like, we have to be talking about this. And then, and then Jen will be like, what is that, giving voice to the voiceless? Is that part of our story? So we really have to weed out what we're getting and use all the information that we get, and then sit down and kind of weed out, how is this helping the voiceless? Where is this
Mhm.
coming from? Is this consistent with our story? Because it's not that we're picking up on things wrong. It's just layers of energy that we're picking up on. And so we have to sort it all out. And then I have like the most expensive subscription to ancestry.com. I have amazing records available online now. So it's really easy to pull out real data and facts about these people that have lived.
See, the thing that is often difficult is that we are psychically sorting through a lot of different information. So you've got historical information. So when we're in a place, or even when we're researching, you have people from different time periods who might be talking to you at the same time. And then as we're driving around, you have people of different geographic locations, and particularly those locations that are more populous have more energy. So we're really weeding through a lot of that psychic energy. And like Jill said, we are competitive, and it's been a process of us actively putting our egos aside. Like actively saying, this is not about me and how good I am right now, right? It doesn't like what is the story? Right. It really is an intuitive process. And we don't always agree. Like, do you remember Sauk City, Jill?
Do I? Yeah.
So Sauk City, we were in Sauk City, Wisconsin. Up until that time, I don't think that we had talked about a story that had been widely reported, right, by the newspapers.
Right.
We were looking for more really unknown type stories that no one had been talking about. So we stumble upon this young girl named Angie who was murdered. And this was in all the papers.
Jen, hold on a second. I just have to interject here. Denise, she was obsessed with Angie. She was like way over identifying, like seriously chalkboard, like red line. Like she was calling me in the middle of the night. I was really worried about her. I was like, you need to just chill out.
That's fair. That's fair. But I think my point is we didn't agree because Jill's like, this is not an unknown story. This is not our story. And Angie literally she was stalking me in my,
I was afraid for
dreaming. I could not stop researching about her and thinking about her. I felt like I was her. It was scary, but we didn't agree. And then we both came around to the fact that yes, this is the story. And we ended up talking about it. It does take some finagling sometimes to get on the same page.
It's true.
Okay. That's why can I pick up on that? Yes. Do I like it? No, because it's uncomfortable. That energy is hard for me. So how do you both protect yourself? Because you're talking murders and inheritance being stolen. And these aren't happy-go-lucky, oh, it's your grandmother making cookies in the kitchen medium stuff. This is heavy and dense. So how do you both protect yourself from that? Because when they start showing up in the night, and I know there are a lot of listeners who are crawling out of their skin right now saying, oh, no, thank you, not doing that yet. So how do you, how do you navigate that? Because this whole thing fascinates me to no end.
Jen, you want to go first?
Sure. I think the first really important thing is that we do set that intention. We're not just blindly going out looking for some ghosts. We set the intention and we're very clear with spirit about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we hope to find. So I think that's really, really important for anyone who's doing this work. The other thing is that Jill and I both believe 100% that we are protected by I'm going to call them our posses on the other side. We have, and maybe you call them guardian angels, ancestors. We have our people, and we're constantly communicating with our people. We feel protected and we listen to our people. So when we're in a creepy cemetery in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, and we start getting the heebie-jeebies and we start feeling like we're not supposed to be there, we listen and we turn around, we get back into the car. So we're constantly communicating with our protectors on the other side. And then the other thing we do is after we leave a location, particularly if it's super creepy, we do the prayer, we do the cleansing, we do the cord cutting because we don't want anything following us. But in terms of it being like dark and negative, I think, yes, that's true. But our purpose is to shed light on something to help a spirit who feels like they've been misunderstood or misrepresented or just unknown and wants the world, to know what really happened or to hear their side. So I think we focus on that and the positive, because there's always something good to come out of a really scary, crappy situation.
You both have done earth energy work and you're very connected. So a lot of times when people do deep spiritual work or healing or releasing, it sends that energy back through their lineage as well as forward, because it's all interconnected. So what popped into my head when you were saying that was, when you're doing this level of work with that person who has been doing that, you're actually helping heal that ancestral line as well.
Oh, wow.
It's
Doesn't
funny.
that make sense though?
100%. And Jen and I just recently in our season 2 felt that we were doing healing work for our father specifically. And we didn't realize it until we got back and we were doing the outlines, and we were like halfway through the season. I'm like, this is all dad. Like he's completely over this. And we were giving him a voice as well as those other people that we were finding along the way, to be honest.
And that comes back to, all of this work really is about healing. It's about shifting the energy. It's about raising the vibration. So just because I know people are curious, where's the scariest place you ended up, or the place that, and I refer to the posse as my dream team. And I agree with you 100% on that when things get, that's my default. And there are some religious icons in there. There are some guides in there. There's some angelic presence, but it's almost a counsel that I trust implicitly when I'm doing this work in everyday life.
Exactly. I was going to say that throughout our lives, we had, like Jen said, we're Catholic, and we've had statues of Saint Michael and prayers in our home growing up. He is my emergency brake, not only in the sense of like mediumship and the woo-woo stuff, but just in life. If I'm feeling dark, like coming from me, if I'm having dark things in my mind, I'm like, Saint Michael. If I'm scared, I was in Atlanta by myself for work one time and I was just scared, I call on Saint Michael 100%, and he never lets me down.
I agree. I love that.
So Jill, you asked, I'm sorry, Denise asked about some of our scariest places.
Oh,
What's your scariest?
Okay. So Denise, Jen and I were like in absolutely nowhere, Indiana, and it's a little place called Rome City. And there, like out of the horizon, there's this huge building, and we get up to it. It's an old sanitarium, and I touched the walls, and the word foreboding like just came out of my
wellies.
And I don't talk like that. I'm not like, well, there's a foreboding presence. Like I'm like, so for me to be like foreboding, and it felt like we were walking around the grounds of this place, and it felt like the shadows were denser and darker. It was just this odd. It felt like, if you are a fan of Harry Potter, the Dementors, it just felt like that hope was gone. It felt scary. Jennifer was wanting to flee. Literally. She was like picturing herself running away from the building. But
it was one of the few places where I could feel, I don't know how else to say it, and I know this sounds cheesy, but pure evil. Like there was pure evil. And I'm not talking about ghosts. I'm talking about there was evil there.
Yes.
That was scary.
Yes. What was weird about it is that on the grounds, they were creating the Stations of the Cross. And so we were by the building, and we were getting those feelings of just evil. And I'm like, Jen, we need Jesus. We need to go find those stations because this is really scary. And we were walking down the hill, and there was this big statue of the Blessed Virgin. And Jen and I were like, oh my God, thank God you're here. I was like, there is something up in that building.
It's true. That's true. That's exactly what happened. But that was Rome City, Indiana. And the location was Our Lady Mother of Mercy Center, which was a religious center that had previously been a sanitarium. And when we went home and did the research, we realized that there was a young nun who had stayed there in the sanitarium who had been attacked by the devil.
Yeah.
and then had a Marian experience where the Blessed Virgin came to her and she was like, we're good. I got you. And so right now they had that year, John, I think it was in 2020, they had just convened a council to decide whether or not the sister's Marian experience was validated by the Catholic Church. And it turns out that they were like, she's a great kid, wonderful nun, but no, she didn't see the Blessed Virgin.
Right. It wasn't a verified Marian experience, which was interesting that we just happened to stop there right around the time that they had convened and decided that she, basically she's not lying or anything, but it wasn't a validated Marian experience.
Old sanitariums, old institutions, old mental health. I worked years and years ago in a state institution for the mentally ill as a kid. They shouldn't have had me working there, but times were different. And the energy that those places held, it's a very unique experience to be in that energy of those old institutions or sanitariums. Because when we think about wherever we go, we leave a little bit of our energy. So any place you've lived or been, there's been some of your energy held in that structure. The intensity that was in those places. And if we go back in time before the deinstitutionalization laws and all the things that came through in the 70s to start to protect people that were institutionalized, there was some really horrific shit that happened in those places. So I wonder if that was almost a portal to invite in that evil, that pure evil, that level of anxiety. So that was that both of your scary place, or is there another? I might as well really freak myself out while we're doing this. Right?
that one stands out. But there are other places where they're definitely being haunted. One of the places that freaked us out was in McGraw, New York. Jill was walking around an abandoned warehouse, and I was trying to keep her from getting arrested for trespassing. Jill,
It wanted me.
It did want you.
It wanted me in that building. I have a theory about people that have passed, that have crossed over and is with the collective love and goodness of the universe, and those who have not, and they're just kind of like just hanging out. People that are of the light and love use our mind's eye. They know how to communicate us in a way that is common for me. And so I'm like, okay, I get it. But when you have a ghost that isn't crossed over, that isn't of light and love, they're like desperate to get attention. So they're unpredictable. Like they're not in my mind's eye. They're not giving me my clairaudient information. They're kind of like being really dramatic to get attention. And I think that that's why that warehouse was so scary and intriguing to me. But yeah, it was haunted AF. The whole town, McGraw, New York, I'm going on record, the whole town, you are haunted.
We were walking around the abandoned warehouse and there was someone knocking from inside. Knocking So we turned around and we got back in the car and we left. But that's more often, I think, the type of scares that we get. Like we know there's a ghost and then it validates, yep, there's a ghost. Bye. We don't stick around. We get it. You're haunted. Bye.
Okay. But you still go and research it and get your story.
Yes.
Okay. I love that. So
Yes.
Do you have any new adventures that you're looking forward to?
We just took a trip to Louisiana and we went back through Mississippi. I'm excited about doing the research for that. We have stories online that we just have to record yet for season 3. I'm really excited to learn what we found in Mississippi specifically, because it was kind of creepy there too. What do you think, Jen?
I agree. I think that, because I work in education, I don't have time all year, to travel. So we're looking at my spring break, which is the end of March. And Jill and I were planning to go to the Northeast until my husband brought up a really good point. The weather's probably not going to be great for driving around, maybe in Maine, in the north.
Smart. Yeah, very smart.
So I think we're now looking at the Southeast instead and planning, to be on the road for a week. So we're looking forward to exploring that area.
What's fun is all out is that you're being drawn all over the country, which that alone is fun. To just travel, road trip, view out the window. The fact that you get to do this together as sisters and actually are friends as well as sisters. I think a lot of people can feel that in their heart. What a beautiful gift that is. But there's all of these amazing places that are away from the populace. So when you said the populated areas have so much more energy, but you get into these small towns and you can feel it. You can feel the energy shift. You can feel there's a town in Southeast Illinois. My ex-husband's family is from there. And I used to joke when we would go there and I'd say, oh, I can feel the air change when we go into this town. It was a very bizarre feel. There was something weird about that little pocket. The fact that you're being drawn all over the country and seeing a similarity between because people are people, spirits are spirits. I love, love, love this. And you didn't scare the shit out of me with this conversation. So, well, a little bit with the devil and the nun, but that's okay. So I mean, your show is fantastic. Please, anyone who's listening that is enthralled with this, these ladies are the real deal. So how can people find you? How can people find your show and you?
Well, you can check us out on commonmystics.net. Find us on Facebook at Common Mystics Pod, or Insta account and Twitter. We're on Stitcher, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, Google Pod, and Apple Podcasts, where you can leave us a positive review.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if anyone wanted to work with either of you individually as psychic mediums, is that an option?
That is, you can either contact us through Messenger or through our commonmystics.net website. And we respond. Jen, what's our Google or email?
commonmystics@gmail.com.
Okay. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you both so much. This has been fun and interesting as hell.
Oh, thank
I was
you.
a little nervous, I have to admit, but you're both, and truly anyone that's listening, these ladies are really just nice people. They're so genuine and kind and open. And the fact that you can go into this alter ego and be in an abandoned building saying, oh, we need to get the blank out of here. I just think that that's really, really cool, because it doesn't have to be, this is such service work for both of you. This isn't about you. You're the messengers. And I think that's the reason I wanted to do this bonus episode with you, is to realize that this is the way that you're shining your light and being of service, is to help raise that vibration. So thank you both very, very much.
I want to thank you very much, not only for having us on today, but I feel like you raised us listening to your conversations and giving us the courage to step out and to own our woo-woo in a way that is, it's saying, yeah, it's here. This is a different part of life that we try to balance out, and we're okay with it. So since listening to you and your podcast and the conversations that you have to make this normal, like all my colleagues know about this podcast, and I feel fully out of the closet and whole to be saying, yes, I'm a psychic medium and a professional.
Oh, thank you.
It's
that
true.
So touched my heart. Thank you.
It's really true. Thank you so much.
I don't know what to say, but thank you.
And having these conversations, I remember being on the phone with you, and we if someone were listening to us, they would think we're batshit. But just to have a conversation so easily about things that may seem so bizarre to people, it does make us feel common. And I think that's why we picked the name Common Mystics, because this is a real thing that happens for everyone.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And thank you both again. And again, check out Jill and Jen at Common Mystics. It's an amazing podcast from two amazing women.
We love you. Thank you so much.
Thank
keep
you,
showing
Denise.
up and shining your light. You're very welcome.